So we're going to start by talking about the
Is that recording it?
yeah, it is.
Oh, that's it?
The conditional if.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to go to like...
So when we talk about conditional if, what it's basically saying is if this happens, then this happens. If this happens, then this happens. And we discussed this a little bit yesterday. But let's just break down the clause versus the main clause versus the dependent clause. So in the main clause, this is a little strange. And the dependent clause, or I'm going to call it the C clause because that's the word for if.
But each one can go in either place.
And it can. They're interchangeable. So our options here for the main clause might be in future. Then your C clause would be your present tense, just straight present tense. Now future, how do we form the future?
Put it in infinitive and add a.
Infinitive and add the ending, okay? Just like, yes, it's very similar to conditional with the way that it's formed. So for example, if I get home, I will feed the dog, okay? So if I get home, I will feed the dog. Or if you want to turn around, I will feed the dog if I get home. So what does that sound like in Spanish?
Si yo ye.
I will feed the dog. So to feed the dog is darle a comer. So how would you say I will feed the dog? Le.
I don't know.
Daré a comer el perro. Now what do you need? If. Si. And this is very simple. It pairs with present tense. If I arrive home. What's the verb for to? Yep. Si llego a casa. Okay? Now in our next example, yes. Well, no, this is how you say to feed, because people didn't know how to say to feed. So then we conjugated it. I will feed the dog if I get home, if I arrive home. Okay? So I'll do this if this happens. Now in the next if clause, we pair conditional in your main clause. Yep. With your imperfect subjunctive. This is where things get a little dicey in Spanish because you're saying to me, well, why isn't it subjunctive with future and present? Because if I get home, I will do this. I will do this. But once we put it into the past, it becomes a subjunctive issue. That doesn't make a lot of sense to us in English because that's not how we exist in the time. So this is one thing that you just have to commit to your memory. In a conditional if statement, conditional goes with the imperfect subjunctive. Okay? So let's come up, the example that we used yesterday is if I have enough money, I will take a trip. So conditional is the word, what's the key word here? Would. Okay? So if we want to keep it, I would feed the dog if I arrive home. I would feed the dog if I arrived home. What would that sound like? Le daría a comer el perro si, and now we need to form the imperfect subjunctive. Llegar a casa. Okay? I would feed the dog if I arrived home, or if I got home. Now the very last one is the conditional perfect. And somebody asked me, can you help me with conditional perfect? What is conditional perfect? Yeah. All it is the perfect tense in conditional, right? Which would be habría, habrías. No, this is conditional perfect. Yes. Yep. Habríamos. Yeah. Habrían, and then you form this with the participle, right? Now with conditional perfect, if it is an if clause, an if statement, what does it match with? Pluperfect subjunctive. There's more. These are just for the if clauses. These are for the if clauses only. Now, pluperfect subjunctive looks like what? Yep. Hubiera, hubieras, hubiera.
What's the helping verb for pluperfect?
Yep.
Wait, what's the helping verb for just regular pluperfect?
Hubiéramos, hubieran. So your question is what, Nolan?
The helping verb for just regular pluperfect.
So they're not regular pluperfect. Oh, pluperfect.
That's not subjunctive.
Does anybody remember what it is?
It was like
Había.
había.
Yep. So, what does the perfect tense add? Have. So in conditional perfect, you're saying, I would have fed the dog if I had arrived home. So all I'm telling you is that with conditional, it's imperfect. Conditional perfect, pluperfect. So once you put a perfect into it, a helping verb, you got to have it on both sides. That's all. So without that había or habría or hubiera, it's just going to be regular conditional and imperfect subjunctive. So somebody tell me what that sounds like. How would it sound to say, I would have fed the dog if I had arrived home? Le habría.
Oh, no. Isn't that irregular?
Dicho is this here. You guys are right. Dado a comer el perro si hubiera llegado a casa. That's it.
No, that's not it. There's a lot more.
No, well, this is it for the conditional if.
Can we go over like